Lip, you want to go first or what?
Sure. I got a little pocket Instamatic camera when I was a kid. You know, it shot the 110 film, and I started shooting pictures with that, man. I just loved it, you know. And I really liked to. I enjoyed writing, particularly liked to write letters. So I like to write, and I loved photography. So that's how I decided to later on major in photojournalism.
My dad was a photographer, amateur photographer in the Navy while he was in Vietnam, and we had all these amazing pictures from him on board ship, and he got really interested in it, and we had a darkroom in the house, and when it came time in high school newspaper class, who wants to take pictures, it's like, well, you know, two of the dorks whose dads were amateur photographers, we raised our hands, and it was my best friend Steve. And so, you know, we were the photo staff, and
there you go.
Been doing it since 1988, I think. Probably, yeah, long time.
I got a job right out of school. I lived in the Branson area then, and worked at Table Rock State Park. And when I got out of college, I got a job at the Branson Beacon and Leader. That was my first job, and it was a 2-day-a-week paper. And there, you did everything. You took pictures, you wrote stories, you laid out the paper. You did everything but run the press pretty much. So that was my first job, and I worked there for maybe just a year or two, and then I got over here and got a job at the Rogers Daily News, and I've been here ever since. Started on March 27th, 1980 at the Rogers Daily News.
Nice. I majored in botany. I can tell you the genus and species of the tree that we're sitting underneath. I won't bother you with that. But I took pictures in high school and kept taking pictures into college to, you know, help pay my bills. And the job that I had at the college that I attended, it was a work-study college, and so my job was I was a campus photographer. I did the alumni magazine, and I dealt a lot with newspapers and magazines because the campus was of interest to journalists. And we'd have people come in, and I would have to help the photographer around where, you know, they needed to know where something was, or an idea for a photo or whatever. So I kind of got a window into that job, and I just loved it. And instead of staying with, you know, plants, I just kept doing this. I mean, it's always felt like play. Gosh, that was almost 30 years ago. It's hard to believe. In the back of your mind, you're making plans like, well, someday I'll just continue what I was doing, but it's felt like a really long detour, but it's been a lot of fun. Go ahead.
Well, I'd say it's changed. It's like night and day, 180 degrees,
yep.
Night and day as far as, you know, I'm sure when Andy started and I started, we were shooting film and working in a dark room, and we were shooting black and white. And now, you know, it's with digital, it's so much better. Mainly because we don't have to work in the dark room around those chemicals, and you can turn your photos in a lot faster. Mainly, I like getting out of the dark room just because of mainly the chemicals.
Yeah,
you know,
it's pretty unhealthy.
Yeah, but as far as you know, things we cover, we you know, cover the news obviously, and you know, there's so many more people around here, and it's changed all the time here. You know, in Northwest Arkansas, it's changing all the time, so that keeps the job interesting. You know, and seeing everything, and so that's really interesting to me.
I think the job changes every day, just incrementally, and it's headed towards a more newspaper approach. Is what we think of as a newspaper approach. You know, car wrecks, things like that. That's sort of kind of gone away. We're not really there to be the traditional newspaper like you would think of, but we're more of a magazine approach, which is someone else might tell you what happened. We're going to try to tell you what it means, kind of pick it apart, get both sides, talk to more than one person, maybe tell you, what we don't necessarily know at 2 o'clock in the afternoon when it happened, but we know at 5:30 after we've talked to people. You're going to get a more comprehensive look. That's been where we've been headed for a long time. Flip and I, we've spent a lot of time at car wrecks. It's why I know half the policemen who are, ready to retire now, because we were at so many wrecks. We just don't do so much of that anymore. That's really changed. That's a big change. I mean, the technology, like Flip said, is a big difference, but just our approach at the end result, the product that we're making is kind of more of a comprehensive thing. It isn't just what happened. It's again, like we were saying, more of a look at what it might all mean. So how we cover things is just kind of 2 or 3 or 4 steps back from where we were before. It's a more of an overall look at things rather than moment to moment. It isn't enough to tell someone what had happened. We like to say what that might mean for them. Oh, go ahead.
Well, boy, I really try to go into an assignment or a situation without any preconceived idea of what I'm going to do there. I wait till I get there and then just see what the lay of the land is, and just ask myself, okay, how can I make the best photo? And we'll go to something and we'll shoot what we think is the best photo, and then we don't just leave. We'll shoot some other photos, all different angles and stuff, and we do that a lot more now. But I try to just have a fresh in my mind and not have a preconceived idea of what I'm going to do.
It can be a lot of pressure to say, hey Flip, go to an event, you've got 20 minutes before you need to leave, get us a picture good enough to be on the front page of a paper that goes across the state. It's a lot. It is a lot, and you can go into it thinking, oh, I want to take this picture, I want to get a kid doing this, but like Flip was saying, you just have to go into it with just that zen, like it will come to you, just relax. It may come to you in the last minute that you're there, but you will find it. Sometimes
we'll go to something and boy, it's going to be like trying to get blood out of a turnip to get a photo out of this.
Yeah.
Well, and that might be true, but you get what you can, and if you have time, you kind of hang around a little longer, and hope that something will happen. Yeah. And a lot of times, if you're just patient, you'll get a good photo out of it.
And after 30, 40, however many years, waiting for something to happen looks a little different, because we may see something now that to us, oh, that's something that just happened that years ago I wouldn't have even seen. So what makes a good picture is an element of your personality, what pleases you as a photographer, as an artist. And it's usually really subtle. The work we do is very subtle. You're talking about a difference in a look, a moment. Your picture may take a half a second to start and then be over, but you'll know it when you see it. You just have to be sensitive to it and be relaxed and let it come to you. It's like trying to call a kitten from underneath a car or something. You got to just be patient. It'll come to you. You just have to be, calm and not worried about it. Mm-hmm. Don't get in your own way. Yeah, talk about what cameras you started out with back in the day. What were you shooting?
Well, when I started at the Rogers Daily News, you still had to have your own equipment. They didn't buy gear for you. So I had this Vivitar 35 millimeter camera, and I shot with that, and it did an okay job, and then I got a couple Nikon film cameras. There was a FM2 that I probably shot thousands of miles of film through, and that was kind of my workhorse camera. And now with our digital cameras that we have now, they kind of look the same, but they sure work different. And those film cameras now, about all they're good for is I got 3 of my old cameras on a display in my living room on a shelf, and that's about all they're good for.
Yeah.
But boy, the first digital camera we used at the paper that I remember, if I remember right, Andy, it was the News Camera 2000, and it cost $24,000.
Yeah, and it weighed 400 pounds, and the battery lasted for about 30 minutes. It was as tall as a shoebox.
Yeah.
Flip, go ahead. You've been going first. Let's go.
You know, I really don't think over the years that my style has really changed very much, because I just try to make the best picture out of every situation that I'm in. So you know, that's kind of been my way I've worked, and I really just think my style hadn't really changed that much. I still have that goal.
I think my style has changed in that when I started, I was much more concerned about what I could bring to the picture, whereas now it's enough to go to an event or see something happen or be around a person and simply just get a picture of them, just record it and get out of the way. He doesn't really need something from me. I just need to do my job. And a lot of my job is being a journalist. So I think that's really, I think that's a big change for me. When I was a student, I was so, you know, I pushed so hard to try to get a certain picture that satisfied me. And now I think I'm happy to get out of the way and step aside and let the event kind of speak a little bit. And I think it serves the reader a little bit better.
Well, the photos that I sent you, one that I really liked is the photo of Ed Stilley and his instruments, and boy, it was just so great to meet Ed, and I mean, what a guy. Makes those instruments and gives them to children, and it was kind of like a photojournalist's dream going to Ed's house, because it was, you know, he's got all these instruments, and his place is real rustic there in Hogskull Holler, where he and Liza lived, and that was probably one of the most memorable and neat stories that I've done for the paper. I sent you one of the total eclipse, of the total solar eclipse, because I went up to central Missouri to watch that, and we lucked out because the sky was clear there, and the line of totality went right over my friend's house where I went up to their little party. But gosh, just the experience was just one of the neatest things I've ever seen in my whole life. I mean, it got almost pitch dark, you know, at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and wow, it was just so surreal. So that picture means a lot to me, and I really like it. There's another one that I sent of the Fayetteville Mardi Gras parade, and I really like the girl. She's going, "Give me some beads, man," and she really wants those beads, even though she's got like 5 pounds of them hanging around her neck. So I like that picture a lot. And I sent a picture of the Buffalo River, because, you know, I love the buffalo, and everybody loves the buffalo. And at the time, I had this point and shoot camera that was on its last days of its life, and the lens was starting to fog up permanently for some reason. But I went ahead and took pictures with it, and when I looked at them, they had this kind of surreal, dreamy quality because of that foggy lens, you know, and that I wouldn't have got with a regular lens. So those are some of my favorite photos. Then the other photo that I sent was of all this jumble of kayaks, and I was on this trip on the Mississippi River with a big group, and we had stopped for the night, and everybody just pulled their boats up, and they were all kind of jumbled. Well, I was walking across this bridge, and I looked down, and I said, "Wow, that looks pretty cool," you know, and so I had a little point and shoot camera with me, so I wanted to make a picture of all those kayaks, but, you know, I wanted to have a person in my picture, you know, to make it more interesting. So I just waited there at the bridge for, you know, 10 or 15 minutes, and finally a couple people walked by to get something out of their kayak, and when they did, I got the photo that I wanted. So sometimes it takes a little patience to get what you want, right, Andy?
Yes, it does. If I had a nickel for every minute I've spent leaning on something, waiting for somebody to come by and do something I was hoping they would do, man.
Isn't that the truth?
Yeah. Well, I think I sent you, 4 pictures, I believe. One, I had to, because of, you know, the person in it actually is a beloved employee here. Marty Powers. At the time, he was a firefighter at the Fayetteville Fire Department, and we were all on scene, several members of the media, local media, and we had heard that there had been a fatality in an apartment fire. So we were kind of just sitting, waiting. It's hard to get a picture that would sum that up, and without having to show the body. We're really not going to show a dead body, but we're going to try to find a way to illustrate that sort of loss. He was a young person and well known, and it was a big deal for the city. So I was waiting and just to see what might happen that would look a little more, a little different than just firefighters working. And out comes Marty Powers in his gear, and I guess his lens was fogged up and smoked out or whatever, and all I saw is he laid this baby down in the sunlight where he could see her, and then he just ran, man. And I got 2 frames off, because you're killing time, and you're just sort of, well, you're not, I mean, you'd like to think that you're like a sniper, but you're really just sitting there talking with friends, and it took a second or 2 for that to be over, so I was lucky to get a picture of anything. And he whisked her away to the ambulance, and it's a stunning picture, really. I mean, it just happened to me. It landed in my lap. It was, Marty and me and Angelica, the baby, now she's grown and has kids of her own, I'm sure. We were all kind of bound by that picture. I hear updates from her life all the time, and when I see Marty, I can't help but think about that day. But right now, I think my style is I really enjoy color and seeking out low-key photographs and things. So I took a picture of a man painting a building, and it seems really, it's a tough sell for an editor. Hey, I got a picture of a guy painting a wall, and they're just rolling their eyes like, oh my gosh, that sounds awesome, Shupe. But it's just, the color of it just stunning. If he hadn't bought that orange ladder, I don't think I would like the picture as well. But I think if you see it, you understand where I am. Low-key photographs are hard because usually what we're dealing with is a dark thing, a human being on something light, which is like, most of the world is lighter than the average human being. So, but this is a dark wall, and the person's brighter. So low-key photographs are interesting to me, and the color of that is just fascinating to me. I really like it. There's a part of me that's still kind of a kid. So most people who in my family who watch my work will always comment on how I just see things through the eyes of about a 7-year-old, and so I love this picture of this father with his son on his back, and his son's like licking his ice cream over his shoulder. It's pretty funny. And there was one more. Gosh, I don't remember. What else I sent? Hold on, I'm trying to think. Well, I'm old enough to forget one of 4 pictures that I sent him, but I'm young enough still to finally remember. And it's funny because this is a picture that's on my wall in my room. So this is a picture of Brady Toops, catcher for Arkansas, hitting a grand slam in the 2004 Fayetteville Regional against Wichita State. I'm most proud of this one, not just because I'm a baseball guy. I love baseball, but I think I gambled and won. I changed lenses. This is a useless lens for a baseball game, but it's really cool when you go out to see all that's going on. It's a little loose otherwise, but knowing that the possibility existed for Arkansas to come from behind and win made me choose this lens, and I'm just really proud of that gamble paid off. This moment was kind of the turning point for the program. Arkansas basically became a baseball school after this, and this was just one of those huge on-campus postseason moments that if you were there, you remember. to explain that sensation is that, and I think Flip said this before, when we take so many pictures, when someone asks what is my favorite picture, and you're talking about 20,000 assignments, you know, it's kind of hard to limit it all down. I enjoy more than anything else just the people that I meet. And
sure.
Yeah, that's the best part of the job. And so, you know, doing this so long, you stop being a photographer and you become more of a member of the community and a photographer at the same time. And so a lot of the joy of the job is just the interactions between the people. So that will always stand as my favorite picture, is all the relationships that I've made. That's the best part of the job.
Just be as careful as you can and don't put yourself at risk. Mainly just kind of common sense, you know?
Yeah, and you gotta know your rights.
Yeah. That's kind of hard to answer, other than we just be as careful as we can, but still try to get some photos.
Yeah. Sometimes the dangerous situation is like trying to get a camera where you want a camera. Mm-hmm. Sometimes that means you have to climb on top of something, and that can be pretty harrowing. I'm really afraid of heights. You're never going to catch me jumping out of an airplane. It's just, I mean, the airplane's got to be on fire for me to jump out of a perfectly good airplane. Never going to happen. And there were times when we've been in situations like that, to where you're thinking, oh my gosh, I could fall pretty easily from here.
Right. Well, and you know, really a lot of things that we go to, there's the potential for danger there. Like if you're at a fire, covering a fire, the whole dang thing could blow up, or the protests that have gone on recently. You know, some shootings could start on that, and so that's dangerous. In fact, one of our reporters was at the Bentonville protest where they used tear gas, and he got some tear gas on him, but.
The smartest thing you can do there is just communicate, like, hey, I'm doing this and I'm going here. So if your editor or whoever it is on the other end of the phone, maybe Flip sometimes, like, hey Flip, I'm going to go in. If you don't hear from me, buddy, come get me. You know, it's funny, but you really have to do those sort of things. You know, what we do can put ourselves in some dangerous situations. Just, you know, being around something, and you're going to have to make sure that somebody's going to check on you. There are times when I remember, having to talk about getting a camera somewhere really up high. You know, there was a training exercise in an old feed mill, and they had this man lift. It's basically a conveyor belt that runs vertically. It's terrifying, and on the conveyor belt are bolted these little steps. They're tiny. They're a foot wide and about 6 inches, across, and it lists you 3 or 4 stories out. There's nothing around you, and you're going through platforms. And I think Marty was probably there with me when he was laughing at me, I'm sure too, like the rest of those guys. Going through these platforms, I remember one of them caught on my camera bag and about pulled me off of this. It's just terrifying. Just trying to get a camera at the top of something is more dangerous than anything else that we do. I think so. I mean, there have been times when somebody's pulled a gun on me and threatened to shoot or threatened me with a dog or whatever because I was taking pictures of something they were doing that was wrong. But more than anything else, it's just you look up and you think, I really ought not be on top of this right now.
Andy?
Well, I'll speak for, I think, both of us in that if you're at a place long enough and you become as well known as Flip is, and he's been doing
Andy.
this for 40 years now.
40? The big 4-0.
Yeah, I mean, whenever I'm lost in the desert,
you're not too far behind.
I know I'm not. I really am not. But if I get lost in the desert, I'm going to tell whoever it is, I know Flip. Please help me. And that will probably, they'll open the doors.
You'll be in big trouble, buddy.
That might be. For me, that's really, really important to me, as far as how I present myself as a person who works for this company, is the positive relationships that I make, and people are glad to see me and glad to see Flip. I hear that all the time. That's a big thing, because when I started, I worked for the Northwest Arkansas Times, and I remember having to apologize to people because of where I worked. And that changed. We had a really good staff, and it completely changed. And after about a year, that went away. But I think that's what I'd hope to bring to the job, whatever job I'm doing, is make someone look forward to working with me and being a part of the community. And that's always been my goal, is the relationships that we make to people, because that's a part of business too. I mean, business is a relationship, and newspapers is a business too. But you have to have that positive relationship in the community. You have to be essential, and you have to have some goodwill back and forth, or you're just simply not going to be able to do your job.
I've had this experience more than one time. Most of the stuff I cover is in Benton County. Well, every now and then I'll go to Fayetteville, to cover an event down there, like a dinner or something. And so I'll walk in the door, and the organizers will go, "Oh, well, we thought Andy was coming."
Yeah, I get the same thing up north. Oh my gosh.
I said, "Nope, not today."
So if I go to a lake, it's like, so do you know Flip? It's like, do you know Elvis? Because what is he like? What is he really like? It's hilarious, man.
Well, one thing that when I started working at the Rogers Daily News back in 1980, we didn't have any outdoors coverage at all. And here's this lake and all this outdoors around us, and I'm a real outdoors guy. And so I mentioned that to the editor, and they started letting me write an outdoors column back then. And so I've been doing outdoors reporting and photography for the paper ever since then, and it just grew and grew and into a section over the years. So I kind of feel like I shaped that. But really, I think everybody that works at the paper, all our reporters, our photography staff, our columnists, they kind of give the paper its personality, So it's just a big conglomeration, kind of shapes the paper, I think.
I think the biggest compliment that you can pay us is when someone starts talking in generalities about the media, but then they start talking about, they realize they're talking to us, and they say, "Well, we don't mean you, Flip," or Andy, or they start naming off all the people that they know that they're their neighbors and that they go to church with, and they realize that, well, that's their newspaper. So we were talking about just kind of film, and that requires, what do we do with film? Newspapers have, not every newspaper, but a lot of them have been really guilty of, give me a print, let's get it in the paper, and we're not really worried about what happens to it after that. So it creates these enormous piles of prints that we all experienced in the newspapers. And we would, as photographers, we go through and keep the ones we like, but a lot of those would just get thrown away once they got cropped or used in the back shot. They'd be in boxes. And negatives weren't, they weren't sacred. They just weren't. And it takes a photographer to be interested in preserving his or her own work. And we went through, Ken Good, he was meticulous at the Times, but then Ken left and another photographer came in, and it just didn't mean anything to him at all. And there's this huge hole in the late 70s through the mid and early 80s at the Times. There's nothing. There's no record of anything. This photographer refused to shoot sports, so oddly enough, my now current neighbor was tasked with shooting sports. And so you've got an employee of the newspaper who doesn't even really work for the newspaper. His negatives are his. They're at his house. So we have no record of any of that. there's just, it was a huge mess when I got in there in the early 90s. And just boxes of ruined negatives and prints. And then we started consolidating space and needing to get rid of all this and all that, and we need to turn this into a break room, and we went digital, and suddenly we don't have a dark room anymore. I know Flip dealt with that. Everybody did. And so when we were doing all those changes, something had to be done with all those pictures. And part of my job as a student photographer in college was to produce historic photos, prints from negatives for coverage. It was a college that was it's Berea College, and it was the first integrated school in the South, and it was of interest to researchers and to writers, and so they were always wanting old pictures from campus. So I was always making prints from these negatives, and I got really interested in it. Worked with a woman whose job it was to curate this collection, and I would also photograph pieces of art that the college would take in, loan out, just as anyone does in a museum situation. This is how it left, so it should come back the same way. And so a lot of documentation. So I kind of saw all sides of what you could do with a camera in that situation. It wasn't just getting a picture, maybe it was just documenting things. And as a person who was asked, give me a picture of, and they would name a building on campus from turn of the century. And so I had to go through, people's work from the turn of the century. And they were people just like we are. This is old times in 100 years from now. And, we're distracted to take pictures of whatever, instead of just, hey, do you have a picture of the barn at the Shiloh Museum, which is we're standing right next to? And do we? I don't know. Did we bother to take a picture of that? I mean, it means something to us, but we don't necessarily always shoot that. So, but it became my problem. I had to find one, and I kind of learned how people shot and really how they didn't shoot. You went to the so-and-so, but you didn't even get a picture of the so-and-so. I mean, you left with details. You don't always want to just shoot details. Sometimes just, take a picture of what the place looks like, because it may not be here. Like, Flip's great about that. He'll go to the War Eagle Mill, and we'll get a picture of the mill, which seems like the most basic of things, but not everybody thinks of the mill. I just want to see what the mill looks like today. It's pouring rain, there's flood, there's whatever. Just shoot back up and give me a picture of the mill. Sometimes, people just forget to do that. So I had a view of that from both sides, a person who needed that picture and a person who was tasked to take these pictures in the present day. And so I knew the value of an old picture, and was happy to make a donation of our negatives and prints to the Shiloh Museum. And I have to say, I apologize for the utter just disarray that they showed up in. I mean, we could not have put them in a laundry dryer and had them be any more of a mess. I mean, they're just in random order, stuck to one another. I'm sure half of it was just garbage because they were sitting underneath the developing trays and just getting ruined. But I think y'all were able to save quite a bit. And you have people come in and they'll sit and look through like, oh, is this Dave Smith? Oh, yeah, it's Dave. And trying to identify who these people are, because there was no information with 90% of it. And I try to leave at least a breadcrumb trail behind me so you could see what is what, even back then. But that was rarely the case. So. That I think was a good thing that I brought to the paper as well. Just trying to add a bit more of a archivist approach on a daily basis to what we were doing, because even now, 20 years later, 30 years later, those are now we've shot historical photos. Flip, we're old, dude. But this place has changed so much that, man, it's great to go back and look and see. How things used to be. I'll tell staff members that, Joyce Boulevard in Fayetteville, it stopped at College, it didn't go west. There was a barricade and a Days Inn, I think it was. And there wasn't a Joyce, West Joyce, or it was just, the whole city has changed that way. And the things you take for granted, they may change. They may not be here later on. So it's kind of fun to add that to how we shoot and how we run our archives.
I really don't shoot any photos like when I'm off work. Sometimes I'll be on my time off. I might be on a float trip or something, but I'll take some photos. But I'm thinking I'll take these and I'll probably use them later on. So I really don't go in my off time and go out, take nature pictures or anything else like that.
To me, I think Flip will probably agree with this. I mean, you can see what you think, but to me, a photo has to have a destination for me to take it.
Exactly.
Like a use, just to take it. I'll think to myself, even when I'm shooting it, if it's just for me personally, and it isn't like a grandchild or something like that. I mean, but just a picture that interests me, I'll think, what am I going to do with this? And that'll keep me from even taking it. I feel the same way.
Yeah,
we're so used to having everything we shoot published, across state that, well, that was worth it. It's like it's a high bar. It is to say, well, I'm not taking it unless it's published in 50,000 news. It's just silly, but that's what we do. It's how it feels. Like, what's the point? So no, I don't. I'm on my vacation. I don't even know where my camera is. Couldn't even tell you. I got to get recharged. 8 hours a day. I don't need 10-hour days.
Yeah.
I gotta be excited what I'm doing. It's like if you're a Major League Baseball player, do you want to go home and play more baseball? Probably not. You just want to keep sharp, and be ready to play. And it's the same thing. It's a mental thing. It's a part of your brain that you exercise about being creative, and it can be exhausting. I don't know that I want to do it when I'm not at work, because I think I'm going to get burned out. I don't want to get burned out. I'm headed to 40 years or more. That's a lot. It's a lot to do one thing.
Well, I don't think we're as busy right now. There's not as much stuff to cover, especially events,
Yeah, events.
So many things are getting canceled now. The War Eagle Fair's canceled, and we always covered that in the crafts fairs, and we just there's just not as much going on right now.
Yeah, our job is pretty two-dimensional. I would think if I got we get assignments at about 5 o'clock every day, and I think if I saw in the assignments a list of some events, and I'm thinking, you mean I gotta go all the way over and we've gotten so used to just getting up and just beating the bushes. It might be nice to have an event to go cover,
Heck yeah.
But it would be really weird. It would be really odd.
We'd rather have assignments than have to go, okay, we need so many pictures today, but there's only 2 assignments, and then we have to go, search out an event or find something, and we'd rather have something to go
it's so
shoot.
much less work. That's why my car's got 250,000 miles on it.
And also a mask is now a part of our camera equipment.
That's part of what I get, in the day.
And we try to go about our jobs, and I try to be careful, and I'll wear my mask, and so
I don't go into buildings unless I absolutely have to. And I'm very conscious of which way the wind's blowing. Oh, it's going that way. I'll stand here. I'm doing that a lot. You just got to be smart. I feel like we are amongst people more than probably we should be. I was born with a hole in my lung. I don't know what that means. Am I taking risks by doing my? I don't know. I'm not going to take any more risks than I have to. Very careful. The mask. I don't know if you run into this, but the mask also is. It's hard. It's really hard to do our job with the mask on. Although we do. This is the first hour I put together without a mask on. It's bizarre. But we're going to walk up to a perfect stranger and try to charm them into letting us into their business to take their picture. Oh, and by the way, this is going to go all across the state. Is that okay? You know, I mean, it's a tough sell, and it's hard to be charming with half your face covered. It just is. You're already 3 steps behind where you were without a mask, trying to get this person to be comfortable. What they're doing may be a beautiful picture, it may be newsworthy, it may be both, but they have to kind of consent to you taking their picture and have to be kind of on board with it. And if you can't get them charmed and to understand what you're doing and that you're not a threat, yeah, you're never going to get the picture. It's hard, yeah, it really is hard. And they may be threatened just with you being there. Just you personally being in their space, it may be a threat. And who could blame them? It's a tall ask to say, hey, can I get right in your business? I know you don't know me or where I've been. You know, it's hard. It's been really difficult.
I've never had one situation where anybody has ever been mean to me or you know, oh, you work for the news media. I'm not. You know, you're the bad news media. Everybody I've always been treated real well. I think most of the criticism of the news media is of the national news media and by a vocal minority of folks. And most people, they know that we're the hometown. We're the ones covering your high school football teams, your city council government, you know, your city and what's going on in your town. You know, we're your neighbors, and I think people know that for the most part. Mm-hmm. But the only incident I ever had, and it's really not related to that, but one time I was shooting some photos of a guy doing something, and I said, hey, I'm Flip with the Democrat-Gazette, and he said, I ain't talking to no Democrat.
Yeah.
So that's, okay.
Okay.
Thank you much. We'll see you.
Yeah. I don't know that, it's hard to pass on the opportunity to have people understand in this time what prejudice is and how far it reaches into everything. You know, having a prejudice against what you call the media, you know, it affects us. I mean, we're your neighbor, literally, to quite a few people I can point to. I'm literally your neighbor. And as Flip said, I couldn't say any better. You know, we cover your kids, your ball games, your city government, and to broad brush paint everybody who does this for a living, who's done this with their life. Yeah, it's really unfair, it can be. But like you say, people understand, oh, we don't mean you. We just, yeah. I think what they mean is the national media, because, yeah, I mean, I go to ball games and, you know, things. I mean, I don't think they're talking to me, but you get that a lot.
I think one advantage that Andy and I have, you know, he covers Fayetteville a lot, and I cover Benton County stuff. People, you know, we've been doing this long enough and been in town that people know us.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of people that we cover, they know. Oh, here's Andy.
And we are invested in this city. Yeah. In this area. You know, and the job that we do, it's a pretty boring job, to be really honest with you. It's not. You know, we don't have a conspiracy going. I'm not paid enough to have a conspiracy. I don't know about you, but you know, we are invested in this area, and we are historians just working in the present day. You know, if you were a historian and you wished, time machine wished to be sent into the past, that's how I have to act, and that's my job. I just act like that's what has happened, and the day that I ended up with is, you know, August 4th, 2020, or whatever day it is. And you have to kind of go about your job in that way. Just chronicle what you see. You know, it's as simple as that, and it can be dull. You know, I don't know that it is as exciting, and you know, there's not a big, huge underground conspiracy. It's a tedious, job, just like reading history might be. We're recording it. Just, you know, it's a fun job because of that, though, too. I mean, you kind of get to kind of see things change, but yeah, to lump us all together and to say that there's you know, a bend to things and all that. I invite anybody who thinks that to come and watch us work and see what the job is really like. You'd be bored about 10:30, and I got to go till about 5. So you know, have a seat. It's a little dull.
One thing about Andy and I covering our respective areas for so long, let's say I got an assignment to go cover something in Fayetteville, like the Thanksgiving dinner at the church in Fayetteville. Mm-hmm. Well, I'll show up and the people will go, "Oh, well, we thought Andy was coming."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if I get captured and taken to Benton County, I just go, "I know Flip," and they let you go. They say, "Oh, well, I'm sorry, I'm sorry,"
Oh,
and they do, yeah, and they let you go. And yeah, it's the key to the city, really, is knowing Flip. I do quite often. I mean, look, I grew up poor, so my expectations of making millions of dollars were, you know. That's not why you would get into this job. If you love it, it's a great job. It's a great life. I mean, no matter what you do with your life, you have to do it every day. You might as well love it. There are people that I run into, and I know they're doing what they love to do. That counts for everything. My father did a job he despised, but he put 2 kids through school, fed all 4 of us. We weren't homeless. You know, he supported his family, but man, he wasn't real happy. I saw that every day, and I just promised I would never do that. I have fun. I'm never going to be rich, but I have a lot of fun. If that does it for you, if that's how you're made, then yeah, it's a great job.